today is all about figuring out how can we use what we already know to go beyond what we already think. And on that note, I would very much like to introduce the Deputy Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Bill English.
Ki ngā tangata whenua, a mihi na nui ki te iwi whānui. Ki ngā rangatira, tēnā koutou mō te pōhuri, tēnā koutou. E ngā rau rangatira, a hui tahi nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you very much for this perhaps unique opportunity for a Minister of Finance to address a room that's not full of men in suits. And a unique opportunity to pick up on the themes that Carl has laid out and give you some insight into the government's generalised thinking, which will help shape, not shape too much, but help indicate what kind of solutions at least are going to align a bit with where we're heading. But as a pretty open-minded government, I would welcome any innovative thinking that comes out of this day. We have here in the room a vast amount of experience. And I really like Carl's idea that a lot of today is about taking what we already know and using it to change the way we think, because there isn't a lot new when it comes to the kind of issues that we are dealing with here. What can be new is our focus, our will, and our ability to create different sorts of relationships with each other and within our communities. Now, I'm not going to lecture you at length about the financial situation of the government or of New Zealand families. You can read about that in the newspaper, and you'll read a bit more about it in the newspaper next week. But right through the time that we've been the government and through this recession, among other objectives, particularly our longer-term objectives to lift economic performance, we've ensured that we have protected the most vulnerable, and that despite very tight economic times, in fact, the resources we are committing to servicing New Zealand families has continued to increase. That might be a bit more difficult over the next few years, but I think you all know that a plea for more money is going to be rejected. So if the most innovative idea that comes out of here today is asking the government for more, then forget it. It's not going to happen. There is, but as I said, the government is spending more than ever on services for families and trying to foster change in how those services are delivered. I could also, I suppose, speculate about the nature of families and how things have changed. I won't do that. We all have our own experience of it. My own personal experience does shape the way that, certainly that I have my input into the policy process. I'm fortunate to be part of a couple of large families. I'm the 10th of 12. My wife, who's Samoan Italian, is the eldest of 13. My children have 60 first cousins and 40 aunts and uncles, and the number's growing. But across that's just a very direct set of relationships. They encompass most of the experiences New Zealanders have of a family and a family in a community, and among those relatives are owners of this building. So we all have a point of view, and mine is strongly around the collective interests that a lot of the problems we deal with arise from the fact that people lose the collective framework in which we all operate at our best, and when that breaks down, people don't function that well on their own. And it's difficult for government to replace that, because a lot of the time when we're providing services to families, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to replace something that has, when it works, more moral legitimacy, better mechanisms for transmitting culture and beliefs than a government can ever do. Nevertheless, we're not going to stop trying. And we know there are some ways that government can replace those things and some ways that it can't. So just a couple of features of what I want to do is talk about a few features of our thinking and then a couple of examples which some of you in the room may be familiar with, but describing them necessarily from a higher level point of view than, say, service delivery. So here's some of the features of our thinking that I think you should take into account. One is that we take the view that change is long term. That's one reason why we haven't, for instance, set out to take cash savings out of social services, because we know that some stability is important, but also that the kind of change we're talking about takes time and therefore takes sustained and consistent effort. Secondly, with respect to that longer term point of view, the government is trying to shift its thinking into a longer term framework. There's a real temptation, as you know, with politicians to launch programs. We love it. You turn up to the launches, someone gets some money they weren't getting before, and next year we refashion them and do it all again because we need to look like we're doing something. We're trying to avoid that syndrome by embarking on programs with a much longer term focus and creating policy frameworks which will last because you think they make sense. I think a second feature of our thinking is that we want to see the policy frameworks and the delivery of services focused primarily on the people who we are trying to assist. A fair bit of the infrastructure of government is designed around people who like to be there in that infrastructure, enabling us to keep restating the problem, keep measuring it, keep talking to each other about it, keep the funding accountability directly through to Parliament for those activities. And there can be a disconnect between that way of organising and what people actually need to do on the ground. So we're trying to develop ways of thinking about these problems that do focus on the individuals. And I have this little motto in my head: we know their names. We know the names of every dysfunctional family in Hamilton. We know every person in Christchurch that has a significant mental health issue. In Southland, we know the names of every teenager between the age of 14 and 20 who has any inclination to get themselves in trouble, and we're probably related to them. On the East Coast, we know the names of everybody. These problems are not huge and insurmountable. These are about individuals who we know and for whom we can take positive action to change their lives. And having spent 25 years around public policy, I'm increasingly sceptical of generalised theories of change. You don't change anything until you've changed one person. And when we're sitting around often in ministers' offices talking about the complexities of how government organises itself, you know, the test is whether the activity and discussion we're involved in is going to reach one simple benchmark. When will it change something for one person? Because once we've done that, the next 100 aren't that difficult. But it's getting to change it for one person in the first place that is difficult. So that strong long-term change, strong focus on the individuals, and I'll come back to some examples to demonstrate that. A third one, I think, is responsibility. The relationship between government and the non-government sector, your broader civil society, can be one that replicates the dependency of the people that we're trying to help, or it can be one of shared responsibility. And it seems to me, unless the relationship between government and the civil society is one of shared responsibility, we can't really expect those who are more vulnerable and less resilient to exhibit shared responsibility, which is what we want. And it seems to me if government and the civil society can model that behaviour, it's going to be easier for us to actually engage in that with others. If the civil society, the non-government community government adopt a relationship of mutual complaint, then why would we expect others not to? The good news is that's not what's happening. The good news is we're seeing a growing sense of responsibility in that relationship. You want influence, you take responsibility. That's the game. That's how we play it. You don't want influence, then you don't have to take responsibility. But the two go together. And it's been pleasing over the last couple of years to see a growing conversation about that responsibility, because when we have the shared responsibility, then we can move to some of those changes that people in service delivery have always wanted around flexibility, because flexibility is fundamentally about trust, and trust is built on a shared sense of purpose and a shared sense of responsibility for that purpose. Then that translates in very practical terms to arrangements where people who are much closer to the problem than we can ever be are able to exercise their judgment and their professional skill and their competence to make decisions that fill some of those gaps I talked about earlier on. So the chain of responsibility is beneficial ultimately for the people that we're trying to help, but we can't expect them to function with a higher sense of responsibility than we do ourselves. And I think the final point about the government's way of approaching this is one that the Commissioner referred to. And all the time I've spent dealing with my own local issues in what are small rural communities and a range of portfolios as a government minister, I've never yet found a community where there wasn't someone with the leadership and the vision and the energy to change things. There is no community that has no capacity for change. And in fact, you will find startling examples, such as the diagram that was put up earlier on, of an ability for someone who, by all their normal categories, can't cope, but can express in a diagram like that, in a picture like that, quite complex concepts of change. And if we just follow that recipe, she will get there. If we help her follow that recipe. So that is a fundamental belief that the solutions don't lie in policy analysis. They don't lie in funding systems. The solutions lie where the problems are, actually. And often that is a long, slow business, but it is in the end the only way